It's election night. You're flipping channels. You're searching for answers. You're either ready to party or freak out. It's okay. ATI Auto Business will always be here to deliver your unfiltered automotive news week after week. So please say hello, make new friends, grow your network, and learn from the best on ATI Auto Business. What's up, ecosystem? Welcome back to ATI Auto Business, automotive ecosystem, where everyone learns more about the automotive industry. Let's get started with top industry news and headlines that include lithium battery plant explosion. What? Scout Motors is up now against NADA, and how much more can we squeeze people? At the quarter hour, we're going to start our Super Tuesday panel. We got Joe Bercari, Paul Machin, Brian Finkelmeyer, Alex Yurchenko, and maybe Will Morris. It is Tuesday. It is Super Tuesday. We all know that. It is Decision 2024, and it just can't move fast enough. So hopefully this show gives you some pause. At the same time, we're aware of what's going on. What's the Electoral College doing? What are the swing states? Oh, Florida's not a swing state. Okay, good to know. What is happening right now? So it's off a million and a half? Does it matter? What's popular vote matter anyways? Okay. I've got unfiltered automotive news that I hope you'll stick around for. I hope you can stand this show tonight. One way or another, you know, we're gonna try not to get too crazy. Actually, I had one of my guests say, Jay, let's not get crazy. So we're not gonna get crazy. There, I said it. Joe Bercari is on the show from Midwestern Car Carriers. Looking forward to having Joe on. Paul Machin from Black Book is joining us. Brian Finkelmeyer of Cox Automotive is joining us. Alex Yurchenko, he is joining us. And maybe Will Morris. You know, many people are traveling right now. That's probably a good use of time, actually. Go ahead and travel. What better place for high anxiety than the skies? Know your ecosystem, new, used, OEM dealer, auction, logistics, etc. I talk about it week after week, and around we go. This is the neutral zone. You will find, if there is a neutral zone, it's here. It's ATI Auto Business. You know, time is money. Which clock is your biggest problem? We are going to be talking, man, it's coming right around the corner. Used Car Week 2024 is in just a few weeks, and I'm moderating a panel, Lenders Moving Repo Cars, Old Habits Die Hard, and we are talking about repo, transport, finance, recovery, auctions, technology. This is going to be a great panel, and I'm really, I'm gonna drop a teaser here in a second of a slide that you're going to get first look. Okay. Tuesday night automotive ecosystem. Last week, who's going to stop the hackers with Broker Advisory Board fighting fraud in auto transport? Really enjoyed this panel. Montway, Auto Sled, Assertus, Pre-Owned Auto Logistics, SYCN Auto Logistics, all on one show talking about fraud. You know you can go in the description and you can click on time codes and you can hear people talk and learn more about the red flags, car shipping scams. Wow. Actually, it's a really good show. Well, hopefully there's another one follow-up here in about 3 months, maybe. And over 32,000 consumer file complaints related to auto transport in 2021. You know that's gone up. In losses exceeding 37 million. You know that's gone up. Thursdays is Industry Logistics. Join us for that. Actually, we got a doozy. This week, wrong car hauler picking up the repo. Do they know what they're doing? What's your strategy? Your car's off the ramps. Now what do we do? We're going to be talking about that. And the implications. It's not just a car hauler show. This also, we have repo and insurance and car hauling all on one show. Now, this is a slide from our upcoming presentation in a few weeks. Number of recovered vehicles this year. We've got 3 million projected next year. That's a lot. And it's tough to get 3 million picked up. How many recovery yards, sold at auctions, transportation, auctions, trends, etc. Man, we're going to be bringing the information. It's going to be great. So here we go. Now it is time. Almost made it. Okay, so lithium battery. What? Recycling plant explodes in Missouri. No injuries reported. A dramatic video showed the moment an explosion rocked a large battery recycling plant in Fredericktown, Missouri after a fire erupted Wednesday, October 30th. Oh, I didn't hear anything about it. On its website, the company said the 225,000 square foot plant is used to recycle lithium-ion battery-related materials from battery manufacturers, OEMs, battery dealers, recyclers, processors worldwide. The thing is described as one of the largest lithium-ion battery processing facilities in the world. How could it escape the news? Especially the dead fish. Thousands of dead fish in the Missouri town under investigation after nearby battery plant fire. Well, we're certainly going to talk about that. The assumption is that the fish kill is from runoff from firefighting. Certain firefighting foams, retardants have previously been found to contain forever chemicals, harmful to humans, animals, groundwater, surface water, especially when it's exploding lithium-ion batteries. Let's go to how dealers plan to fight Scout Motors. That's some happy news. NADA dealers plot state-by-state challenge to Scout Motors direct sales. How dare they sell Scout Motors? The NADA and state dealer associations across the country plan to leave no stone unturned as they push back against Scout Motors' nasty decision to bypass Volkswagen stores and sell vehicles direct to consumers. In the vast majority of states, the OEMs are not permitted to sell direct or compete with their dealers. There are some exceptions to that, but those exceptions generally relate to the non-legacy OEMs who do not have and have never had a dealer network, Tesla, etc. Since it was first hatched in May 2022, Scout has consistently labeled itself as an independent but VW Group-backed brand with products aimed specifically at U.S. consumers. Okay. Its corporate structure and formal attachment to VW Group could be a challenge in its quest to sell direct to a consumer. You can't sell direct to a consumer? Jeez. Scout's most likely path to selling and servicing vehicles independently is simply follow the state-by-state game plan blazed by Tesla, Rivian, and Lucid. NADA CEO Mike Stanton declined to share details about the association's strategy to block Scout from its direct sales, but bluntly said everything's on the table right now. My God, sounds like terrorism. The association said it's prepared to challenge Scout in courthouses and state houses across this country. Scout also plans to sell Traveler, SUV, and Terra pickup via an app that will handle reservation, sales, delivery, and service with vehicle purchases completed in minutes. You can't do that. Not 4, but 3 key takeaways from Tesla's third quarter earnings report. Number 1, Tesla's energy storage business. While Tesla's third quarter auto revenue grew 2% to $20 billion. Wow. It only grew 2%? To $20 billion? My gosh, energy sales rose 52% to $2.4 billion on deliveries of Megapack batteries used by utilities for energy storage and Powerwall units for home use. Here's the kicker. Megapack prices vary but start at about $1 million for a single unit. Sounds affordable. Number 2, Tesla semi-truck update. Tesla unveiled a prototype of its long-haul semi-cargo truck in 2017, but has repeatedly missed its own forecast for volume production and deployment. But it's on track to start pilot builds in the second half of next year, with production starting in the first half of 2026. And takeaway 3, Tesla's autonomy software progress. Musk has been promising for a decade that Tesla vehicles would become fully autonomous through a software update, but has missed yearly promises to that effect. The software should operate autonomously next year with fewer crashes than a human for the same number of miles driven. However, I will say I think autonomous vehicles are inevitable. I just don't know what year that is. First time small dealers struggle with floor plan loan approvals. This will be a topic tonight. Dealers struggling with floor plan loan approvals. So is that new? Is that a new trend? Ford tops Q3 earning expectations, but EV losses take a toll on profits. The company's just still losing billions on EVs. After losing another $1.1 billion on its Model E business, Ford's EV losses reached $2.5 billion through the first year of 2024 and expects to reach $5 billion. Why not? They're still great. Oh, they're just great. Sticker shock jolts consumers. Edmunds reports 75% of surveyed consumers say high prices put the brakes on vehicle purchases. 3/4 of America. Nearly 50% of new car shoppers said they'd like to spend $35,000 or less on their next vehicle. Nearly 15% said they'd like to spend $20,000 or less. Good luck with that. Edmunds data indicates the average transaction price for a new vehicle was over $47,000 in July, and there were nearly zero new vehicle transactions under $20,000. During July, 6 out of 10 car buyers who finance used vehicles paid between 6 and 11% interest. Nearly 75% said they would delay their next vehicle purchase. Oh, that's great. More than a third of new car shoppers are targeting interest rates between 0 and 3%, but if you look at the graph, they will pay more. And I think maybe that's probably the happy inflatable guy who's holding a sign that says they will pay more. They will pay more. Cars are people too, CNET survey, 78% of Americans are stressed out about high energy bills. How's the EV gonna... What? 32% of U.S. adults are leaning on borrowing and payment plans to afford their energy bills. And we're going to go all electric? That's a third of America. Negative equity on the rise. The average amount owed on upside-down car loans hits an all-time high in Q3 2024. Analysts say more than 1 in 5 vehicle trade-ins with negative equity are underwater by $10,000 or more. Is there any good news? Number of charge-offs and charge-offs with no repo, right? Just write it off. We're not even going to repossess it. We're just going to write it off. It's fine. It's 2008. And then Carvana just finished with a monster finish. Good job, Carvana. I don't know how. I mean, nobody else had good news, but my God, $7,000 a unit. You guys are geniuses. So what's at stake in the U.S. election for the auto industry? Inflation, global competition, labor, North American trade. Let's do some what are you talking about? Here we go. All right. Oh, boy. All right. So, hey, you know what? What are you talking about? Structure, purpose, call to action. They say write what you know. I say what makes you mad. They say be nice, be kind. I say I'm passionate. But tell me something new. Please. What was the call to action that I missed, by the way? Yes, we're talking about content again. I know you still have your podcast. I'm just asking why. Because somewhere when you're alone, I know you're thinking it. So let's focus. All right. What is it that you do well? What services do you offer that will benefit me? What makes you the authority? What do you do? What is it that you do? What are you hoping to change? Everything isn't fine. But what are you talking about? It's something people really want to know. So why aren't they listening yet? And who are you talking to? Are you talking to me? Because if everyone, including me, knows you want me to be kind, why do you just keep saying it? What if you adapted your message? What if your message is old? Is your message hollow? What would be the updated version of your mission? And let's say you're on to something. Let's assume people aren't kind and that they're just bad. What's the best way to approach this new needed call to action? What if you asked first X, Y, and Z rather than assuming that you know what we're all doing? How do you know what I'm doing? We haven't talked. Why only one guest at a time? Let's say you make some changes, not just cosmetic, but fundamental. Are you seeing a new path open up? It's like magic. Change is good. When I make shows, I research. When my guests talk, I try to follow up on things that they've said. I'll introduce outside information if I need to, but that's a backup plan. Because when you're talking and I'm listening, I'm paying attention to you. And if I'm not, I'm gone. You're gone. Because I wasn't savvy. We got to be savvy and focused. We plan with a structure, we build with a purpose, we're headed to a call of action with something new. So when you fire up that microphone on your next podcast, ask yourself, what makes you mad? What makes you different? Are you getting to a point, and is there in it something for me? That's the memo. Thank you so much. All right, let's keep going. It's ATI. It's where everyone learns more about how the automotive industry works. It's new, it's used, it's dealer, it's auction, it's logistics. If you don't know one of these verticals, if you want to learn more, let me know. I really do want to know, whether it's Tuesday, whether it's Thursday. I ship information, not cars. Get the podcast. Great way to, get the information on your own time. I understand. Go to atiautobusiness.com. You can click Contact Us. Get a hold of me. And I just want to mention, as we move into the election results, I'm seeing more of this. So-and-so is open to work, looking for roles. Hashtag open to work. Here's another one. Looking for work. I know it's a template, but I'm seeing more of these. Like, every time now I see one, I jump. Because I think, oh my God, somebody else is looking for work, and it seems like it's going to accelerate. So as I look at the most important issues for voters in the U.S. right now, I know there's a lot of distraction issues, but jobs, even though it's ranked 4th, it's tied to half of the top 10. Jobs. Without a job, it changes your whole perspective, right? And I know Joe shared this with me as it comes to jobs and truckers, carriers, freight, car hauling. Court data reveals extent of truck lease program abuse. Carriers gain competitive advantage by exploiting owner-operators. Exploitation of the worker, it's not good. And it leads to, it leads to something. Somebody's going to lose a job, quit a job. Then somebody else, less qualified, fills the job, and on it goes. What are we doing? Do me a favor, stick around right after this. We got a live panel. Don't freak out. It's ATI. We'll be right back.
Transport Auto Quoter is by far the leading auto quoting software on the market, and the only auto quoter with a pro version that comes preset with accurate pricing for anywhere in the U.S. So you don't have to worry about it. The best part is that no change with your current software is needed. Just plug TAQ in and start booking jobs. Carriers can easily plug TAQ into their current websites and start making money right away. I bet you're wondering how we do this instantly and accurately 24/7. Well, constant analytics is the key. Our PriceWatch team is constantly monitoring current market conditions, paying close attention to seasonal and quick-moving industry changes. At the end of the day, it takes a lot of time and data to maintain good pricing, time that most of us just don't have on a daily basis. So free yourself up. Using TAQ Pro is really a no-brainer. Save time and money, maximizing your leads and optimizing your online investments. You'll finally be able to sleep well at night knowing that TAQ is on the job selling for you 24/7. Never missing a potential job.
All right, we need to brainstorm for this commercial. How do we show our audience that we're the best auto transport platform in the industry?
Oh, we need to show them our dispatch manager. Optimizing routes has never been easier.
We should definitely show them our EDI management screen. Managing contracts is simple with ClearPath's EDI toolkit. Who doesn't want to work with the big manufacturers?
These are all great ideas, but we need to highlight what makes us special.
Sure, we can talk about all our awesome features, but the bottom line is we invest in every single one of our clients, giving them the power to scale up and increase their revenue.
That's perfect.
Auto Hauler Exchange has revolutionized the way vehicle haulers and vehicle shippers collaborate. The Exchange B2B marketplace connects vehicle haulers directly to shippers in a frictionless manner. The Exchange helps vehicle haulers maximize their capacity while eliminating empty miles. The Exchange is the first true B2B marketplace of its kind in the vehicle logistics industry. By connecting carriers and shippers directly, carriers can save time and choose which opportunities fit their needs each day. At the same time, shippers can rest assured that their vehicles are being moved by qualified, vetted carriers who fit their vetting program. The Auto Hauler Exchange has democratized the vehicle logistics industry by eliminating the middlemen and connecting shippers directly to available carriers.
Why does a broker take a percentage of every load you move when clearly you could be working direct with carriers? Go around the broker. Get faster car shipping. Visit AutoHaulerExchange.com. All right, here we go. Oh, please do help me wish a warm welcome to my Super Tuesday. Live election results, pure speculation, automotive panel. What's going on, everybody?
Hi, everybody.
Wow.
Okay,
so here, I'm excited. All right, but I got to let you guys talk. I just gave a speech about listening to people when making content. So I'm going to try to do, walk the walk. I'm going to go in order on my screen. Alex, everyone, I'm looking for a brief paragraph, and then we'll start jumping into stuff. Alex, please say hello. Tell us more about you.
Hello, everyone. I've been in automotive for close to 10 years. Until very recently with Black Book. I left the company a few months ago. In a few weeks, I'll announce my next journey, but now I'm on the retail part of automotive and switch from wholesale to retail.
Ooh, from wholesale to retail. Okay, there'll be more on that. Brian Finkelmeyer, please say hello.
Jay, good evening. Happy Super Tuesday. Good to be here. And I always enjoy being on the show and talk about the car business with you. I've actually just about to celebrate my 10-year anniversary with Cox Automotive, and prior to that, I spent a long time at Nissan, and proud to say that I started my career answering 1-800 telephone calls, and here we are many years later sitting on ATI doing election night automotive podcasting. So great to be with you, Jay.
Wow. Thanks, Brian. Paul, great to have you back. Please say hello.
It's really good to be with everyone again. Good to see some really great friends and some new ones, Brian. Looking forward to a great conversation and to hear, what everyone else is hearing and seeing in the marketplace. I've been quiet for a while, just letting my predictions and forecasts unfold and just kind of giggling.
You're right. You've just been watching, right? You said it a year and a half ago.
Yep.
Hey, Joe, please say hello. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Hi, I'm Joe Bercari. I'm with Midwestern Car Carriers. My gosh, Jay, how long have we been on and off together? It's been quite a while. Several of the team here I've either been on with or I have watched over the years. So it's great to be here, and happy Election Day, everybody.
Right. So, all right, I like to drag elephants out into the middle of the room.
Why's it got to be an elephant, Jay?
Right? Oh.
Why not a hippopotamus?
This is what everybody's watching. Here's what I did. I went to this way that it's not CNN or Fox or whatever. I went to Google, right? Because Google has to be unbiased. Okay. I typed in live election results in the search bar. Look, there it comes up. There's the map, there's the number, and away we go. Right off the bat, do we have any historical insight? Because as I do this, I really do believe as we talk tonight, we're always talking like today, tomorrow, last week. What about years ago, years ahead, years behind? Historical perspective. Is this our normal trend? Does anybody remember?
This is a deep question, Jay.
Yeah, it's very deep.
That's what ATI is here for.
I don't think that you can compare this election to any other, and I'm not going to get into the details and components. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to go out on a limb. All right, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to tell everybody whom I voted for. Straight up and down, I voted 100% Americans. That's what I voted for. There you have it. straight up and
Voted
down,
for
all
Americans.
American candidates. So but no joke, kidding aside, this is a different election because we're in a weird spot where the traditional American political parties have really started to shift their dynamic, really started to shift their rhetoric and their focus. The party that was the Republicans, 20 years ago is not the same party as it was today. It doesn't have the same policies in mind, different priorities. And the same can be said about the Democratic Party. They are just not the same group of people that So from historical perspective, you can't really look at this map and say, oh, this is normal because that was always a stronghold for this people and that was always a stronghold for that people. Today, those parties, they just do different things. They have different, they've evolved into different animals. And so I don't think there's a history here that you can apply at least not from a party perspective. Now, from a different axis, let's just say, maybe call it social or some other perspective, I think that's a little bit different story. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about what does that do to our business and what does that do to this, to this environment that we're in, and will there be meaningful impact and change if this or that happens? And I think that's actually, to me, who wins is just who wins. I think that the impacts of what happens to the business community, in our little community, versus the country writ large, you're going to see sort of the small thing playing out and then the big thing playing out. That's in my opinion.
Yeah, in terms of dynamics, it's very different election, but in terms of result, it's very similar that we've seen in the last since 90s. It's going to be 10,000 people in 6-7 states that will decide elections. So it's it's going to be very close in terms of electoral votes. But the dynamics and why it's going to happen is very different this election versus even 4 years ago.
Very true. Very true. One of my favorite quotes. I think it was Karl Marx. He says, "The only thing that matters is who controls the vote, counting the votes." Right. So we've seen some evidence of where there's misinformation, misdirection intentionally to confuse everyone. But I like what you said, Alex, and I like what Joe said. What it boils down to is how it impacts and affects our business, right? And I can tell you that we have a community of business partners that are feeling the pain. They're feeling the pinch. And it's a different economy compared to what it was 4 years ago. So I think people are voting and people are looking at that and saying, you know what? I know what it was like pre-pandemic. I know what it's like pandemic, and I want something to change. And I think we're going to see some of that. So I'm excited. Either way it goes, I have a business plan. I have an A, B, C, D plan ready to roll because there's always opportunity in the dark clouds.
Agreed.
Whoa.
Agreed.
Well, we're really headed in the right track here. This is awesome. Can we define? Are we able to lay out the menu? If we have the steak, this happens. If we go with the spaghetti, this is it.
I don't know if it goes that way, though, Jay. I mean, we all have our biases, okay, without getting into that. But, so we all have probably some sort of feeling of who we want to win or maybe who we don't want to win and, the other someone else by default, however you want to look at it. But, wanting things to go poorly because your favorite candidate was unsuccessful is really kind of a stupid approach. I mean, we're in this together. This is our shared economy. So, even if you're in, maybe your candidate doesn't prevail, we should still want success. I mean, like that prosperity is generally speaking kind of a positive thing. It helps more people than it hurts generally. So, I the way that I look at this again, I don't know that I necessarily am doing the plan A, plan B, plan C type of approach. I think I'm taking it from a little bit more pragmatic. You know, the fundamentals are where it's all at for me. You know, it doesn't matter whether there's this or that or the other in office. Focus on the fundamentals. Keep your business strong. The core businesses should survive any 4-year stretch of period of time if you're doing all the right things.
True.
Brian, I'm curious. I want to think about this another way, another angle. Brian, if we look at this from the OEM and dealer perspective, what would you add given this conversation?
Well, I think that's a great question, Jay, and I think that this is something that's central on the minds of many OEM executives right now, because I would say that one of the first times, certainly in my career, that I can remember the government intervention in our industry being the extent to which it is. And what I mean by that is the EPA standards that have been enacted, that these car companies, today the average blended miles per gallon is about 27. By 2026, I think that bumps to 40 miles per gallon as the standard. And then by 2030, we need to get to 50 miles per gallon. So you're talking about almost doubling fuel economy in the next 5 to 6 years. And I would say that if anybody wants to place a wager with me on that, I would be willing to bet heavily on the under, that we're not going to double fuel economy in the next 5 to 6 years. And so the implications of this for the automakers is massive, which is they're forecasting somewhere in the neighborhood of $14 billion of fines, where companies like General Motors and Ford would have multi-billion-dollar fines that they would have to pay, or turn around and buy emissions credits from people like Elon Musk. So that's one scenario. And then I think the other thing, that even what happens with tonight's election may have some implications on this from a federal standpoint, but what is likely not to change is the implications in the 13 ZEV states, which have adopted this California standard. And those states, I don't know if your viewers are aware of this, but what will happen here in the next year or so is car companies, for every 3 ICE vehicles they sell, they will have to sell 1 electric vehicle. And if you don't hit that ratio, you will be assessed a $20,000 fine per vehicle until you reach that 3-to-1 threshold. And then over the next 5 to 6 years, this transitions from like a 3-to-1 to a 2-to-2 to eventually they want you to be the other way, of 3 battery electric for every 1 ICE vehicle. So I would just say that, from 30,000 feet, I think this is one of the single biggest headwinds facing the auto industry, is how do we navigate this situation where the government's ambition and, quite frankly, requirements is not aligned with consumer demand. And we're seeing that, very stark terms, with companies having to literally resort to $99 EV leases on $53,000 electric cars. That is not a sustainable business model for any car company.
That's very true.
I got to start writing things down, because there's 2 or 3 things that I had takeaways from that questions that I had. Number one, do we think that the EV credit program will continue for the next 4 years? In other words, would a car company even be able to purchase EV credits to be able to offset?
I believe they will, yes. I mean, last year, Tesla netted about $15 billion total, and about $3 billion of that was just them selling off credits to Stellantis, General Motors, and Ford. So it's really a wealth transfer, if you think about it, is the full-size trucks and SUVs that get sold by the domestics. They turn around and take a portion of that profit and turn around and ship it to Elon Musk.
Yeah. So how long will the government allow that to continue?
Well, we'll see. If Trump wins tonight, I know Elon's a pretty big supporter, so we'll see what happens.
And the other,
another
question that I had. Hang on, Jay. Another question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry to cut you off, host. But it's been a minute since I've been on. So another question though is the comment about the ratio of ICE sales versus EV sales. That's for personal vehicles. What about for commercial vehicles? I think that there is something in place where California is mandating that commercial vehicles are at another ratio. It may not be the same 3-to-1. I think it's something like 9-to-1 or something along those lines. But in theory, they would walk those 2 things up together. And the commercial vehicles for battery electric are nowhere close to ready. No, not even. They're 30 miles behind wherever you think EVs are today. So what does that mean? And how does that work? So that to me is another really interesting piece of legislation. To your point, I mean, a lot of states have adopted that. California being the first and largest. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not familiar on the Class C and D and the big commercial vehicles and what the requirements are, but I do know this to be true that I work with a lot of OEMs, and I know that the average incentive right now across all vehicles in America is $2,500 to $3,000 a car, depending. And on the average incentive spend on EVs right now is around about 17,000. So that just puts into context like how much massive amount of money the car companies are having to plow into discounting to try to move these EVs off lots. And, from the consumer's perspective, one of the challenges is it's a little bit like the iPhone. You buy an iPhone 11 and a couple years later, you're like 3 generations behind, and technology, the iPhone continues to improve. And I think we're going to see a similar circumstance with these EVs is over time, the range and the technology gets better and better. And so from a consumer standpoint, 90% of EVs are leased. And I think that's a rational decision by consumers because they're saying, I want to defer the risk on what this thing is worth in 3 years when the landscape of technology might look very different.
That's right, Brian. That's right. 100% right.
Now, for the last several years, when I guess everyone was optimistic and forecasting, higher EV penetration, my view was we're going to get probably to 25-30% by the end of this decade. And I think we are on the way there. California is going to be there within a year or so. But I don't think that's the biggest challenge that's right now in front of even OEMs. It's all about economy. It's interest rates are coming down. The question is how fast they're going to come down. And that depends on overall economic health. For the last 2 years we've been waiting a recession that never happened. So we did have a soft landing with a very strong job market. The still question, when is the next recession? We're going to have one. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. In my view, if candidate A wins, we're going to have it later next year. If candidate B wins, we're going to have it in 2 years. So it's all about the timing. And demand for EVs, ICE, and hybrids, they're all tied to the general economy. Government, yes, plays a role, but if unemployment jumps, we're going to have problems selling cars. And for at least for now, I think economy is in a very strong position. Even with if you look at the worst indicators right now are repossessions, but they're only through the roof for subprime loans. Prime loans are still historically very low. And number of those subprime loans in the last few years went down significantly. So overall, I think we are in a strong position to lend softly, regardless of who's going to be elected. Hopefully in a few hours and very decisively.
All right, you bring up a great point when you talk about the repossessions and the kind of soft landing that we're going to have, Alex and Brian. You very true about the EV market. The affordability crisis is the problem with electric vehicles, and so that means we need more competitors to enter into the U.S. vertical that need to meet the U.S. regulations and requirements for safety standards and all this other stuff that they're not used to in foreign countries that we have here.
But I mean, Biden added 100% tariff to any Chinese electric vehicle, right? So the Volvo, I believe it's called the EX30, is built in a Chinese plant. They're going to sell a Volvo EV here for $35,000, but now it's $70,000, right? Because they've added 100% tariff. And I think Trump has said that he might even become more aggressive on that. So I think that's one of the other dynamics is that we're not going to be able to bring in less expensive vehicles because of the political landscape, regardless of who wins. I think that those tariffs are likely to remain in place to protect union workers here in the United States.
But I think it's more than that, though. I think
it is, Joe. It is. You're 100% right. It is way more than that. When you follow the money trail, and the reality is 75-80% of all the mineral rights is owned by one country, and they're not, and they tend to be hostile towards us. and they're what's needed to manufacture and produce the EV batteries. Until we figure out a way to own our own production of our own minerals and
Do you know
fuel.
how hard it is to get approved from the Environmental Protection Agency
Bingo.
to do mining in the United States?
Agreed,
I mean,
right?
this
There's
is
your
like
problem.
we're talking
So,
off of both
we'll
sides of our
shift
mouth.
the responsibility to the remainder of the world to pollute the environment, so we can pound our chest and say, look, we're doing our part, one little country, while 240 of them are destroying the atmosphere.
There's your problem right there, and I think that comment right there, Brian, with respect to the difficulty to be able to get mining rights and so on and so forth. And by the way, also too, I mean, the reason why we have the processes we have is for a very good reason. We don't want to kill people. We don't want to poison people.
Right.
We don't want to kill fish and wildlife and other such things. And we don't want to basically strip mine things so that way they're utterly valueless for the next 250 years. We don't want to turn things into nuclear test sites, no pun intended. So there's good reasons why those things are there. But that's why this the decision, and I don't remember whether it was Brian or Paul or who brought up that the government involvement in this, shoving this down the American public's throat, was so I mean, really, again, kind of confusing. Like, if you take a look at this on balance and spent a few minutes in some critical thinking, you'd say, wait a minute, is this really the right plan? Or maybe there's another thing that we ought to be exploring here. Was this the right direction? But obviously, we can't depend on politicians to make good
I think this is
decisions.
a great venue for us to be able to maybe start a conversation that needs to be happening across multiple venues. I'm not afraid to ask those common sense questions. Well, who benefits? Why do we have to push this charge right now? What's happening? Where are the controls and the regular? Is there an EPA in these other strip mines? No. I mean, great point, Brian. As far as I know, there's no OSHA, there's no EPA. There's no HR services in third world countries or where strip mining is being done, but we're having to buy their materials to build our batteries. All under the guise we're saving the environment. Meanwhile, we're killing everybody else.
So one of my favorite stats on this entire thing that's like too good to be true is China has about 35 of these ships that carry 8,000 cars. They've placed orders for about another 50 ships. So it's clearly signaling their ambition to export vehicles. And just to put this into perspective, the global auto market is about 75 million units a year. China has capacity to build 45 million cars. So they have all the human capital, the technology, as you say, the rare earth mineral mining. They've got all the ingredients. So what's just a delicious stat is that the carbon footprint of one of these ships that's going around the world dropping off cars, these ships run on the lowest grade crude oil available. And they say the offset to the annual carbon footprint of one of those ships is about 50 million electric vehicle miles. So they'll be doing a lot of laps around the United States to offset the carbon footprint of the ship that brought them here.
I think we should send all those ship captains an American flag and a map towards Yemen so that the Houthis can take care of that problem for us.
So I think Alex brought up a great point where he's talking about the pricing and the kind of how do we resurrect our economy, right? What do we do about that? Well, that's finding those affordable vehicles, and they're in the market. We have them, right? They may not be new. That's a challenge for the OEs. I don't recall any stat that said they're in any significant volume a brand new vehicle for under 20 grand. Or much less a brand new vehicle under 25 grand.
Yeah, it's like less than 1% of the US auto industry new car volume is under 20 grand or 25 grand. But I think the challenge is just that the car companies, they can't make any margin. That's why General Motors and Ford and the domestics have gotten out of small cars, because they can make 4 or 5 times more money selling Explorers and F-150s. And so to make $2,000 on a Ford Escape is not interesting to them. So just to kind of abandon that part of the market. And during the microchip shortage, all car companies just said, well, let's just build big trucks and SUVs and quadruple our margin and not pay much attention to that more affordable segment. I think that's clearly a spot in the market that's, somebody will eventually fill it. But for right now, there's not a lot of inventory available at that affordable price point.
So, Brian, that's 75% of the market.
Yeah,
75% of the market wants that inventory, new or used.
Yeah,
so that
I agree.
misalignment that we have, it's not only EVs, it's about pricing and affordability.
That's it.
And in the last 3 years, OEMs were able to produce higher trims, more loaded cars because of a chip shortage, because of other reasons, and consumers had to buy it. There was no choice. And now we'll see if they're going to change. There is a change. It's a slow change. They're bringing back. It's cheaper models, cheaper vehicles, but it's nowhere near to what we've seen in 2018 and before. That misalignment is, it seems that it's not going to end anytime soon. And as I said, it's not about EVs or hybrids. It's about vehicles in general.
Being affordable. That's right. So Jay, I'm sure you can research it and find it. Almost 3 years ago, you and I talked about this on your show. I said, it seems like the market, the way the factories and the way the dealers are operating is they only care about the top 25% of the economy, the top 25% of the people who can afford to overpay for everything that's out in the industry. If you do the research, you'll find that I said that's the market that we're creating, and here we are.
Yeah. So Paul, to that point, it's amazing. Is before the pandemic, if you looked at the total industry sales and broke that out based on household income, right, the heart of the market where families making, let's say, 75 to 125 a year, that was really the strength of the market, right? And down over on the far right-hand side was families making over 250. It was only 4% of total volume sales. Last year it was over 16%. So just in a few short years, the percentage has quadrupled in terms of families making over 250,000 that can afford a new car. So you can tell it's like, these prices, new cars has effectively become, a luxury for wealthy people.
Yeah. I got a neighbor of mine, Brian, who has a Ford. I won't say, he's got the Lightning. He's over $100,000 in negative equity. Because he just had to have it. He had to have one of the very first ones that hit the lot. And, he wanted that. I'm like, dude, why didn't you talk to me first?
It sounds like he makes enough money to afford it, so we won't feel too bad.
But now he's crying. He's like, help me. I'm like, I can't help you. There's nothing I could do to help you. Wait for the second lien opportunity to come out with the government's putting in practice. Then put a second mortgage on your home that you don't have to worry about. It's not going to be. The rates on that are supposedly not supposed to be like a home equity line of credit or a second mortgage. They're supposed to be equal to what your prime rate mortgage is, supposedly. But it only fills 40,000. Then put a second mortgage, 40,000 customers nationwide, based on the top number they set of what was it, almost $2.5 billion. Only would fulfill 40,000 families if they went out and all knew about the program. Right? But that's the wrong way to go about it. We've got when Jay put up there, you put up there 1 out of 5 vehicles have $10,000 in negative equity that were traded. Okay, that's the key word, traded. I can tell you anecdotally, because I talked to my dealer buddies. I was a dealer. I was a GM for almost 15 years running stores. They're hemorrhaging opportunities on appraisals. They can't get these people out of their cars because they don't have the credit.
Well, so there's a couple things here, Paul, and well, kind of everybody. For starters, we can't ignore the fact that that one of the largest moneymakers in the automotive industry, whether it's new or used, is financing.
Yes.
And by the way, it kind of always has been. Like, that's not new. Kind of always has been. So when financing is right now, financing drives everything. And I think it was a matter of fact, I think it was the last show I was on with Paul. We were talking about how different the financing landscape looks today, because now all of a sudden you've got 72-month it's not what can you afford, it's what's your payment going to look like and how long are you going to stretch this out. And anybody that has a 101 degree level of economics understanding, and I'm under that 101 level of economics understanding, would know that at some point in time the depreciating asset, you can't possibly make that math work, and that's going to be a real big problem. So to the point before about the F-150 with that was negative equity, that's one point right now because it's new and sexy technology and we have it, it's unproven, and so the market doesn't like it yet. And then furthermore, now with interest rates being where they are and the high cost of the capital investment, now all of a sudden you're looking at, oh my gosh, you're not going to be at a position of parity until the fifth year of a 7-year loan. Well, how does that look in the economy? How does that shape the economy, and what does that do to SARS? And then it all spills downhill from there into the other marketplaces.
Well, Alex will remember that I have some fintech companies that are now producing originations on 4-year-old vehicles for 72 months. In some vehicles, they're doing as much as 144 months on a near new. So you get a 2-year-old vehicle, it's still worth $80,000 on retail. You can go out to 144 months. How do you calculate that risk? We had to figure that out at Black Book. And we did that at the request of some of our lenders. When I had one of my fintech partners said 21% of their portfolio is vehicles that they were financing for 3, 4, and 5 years that were 2012 to 2015 models. Blew my mind.
I think we are at the top of that hill. For longer than 15, 16 months, the finance amounts were flat. Rates were not going up, so it's been flat, and actually now decreasing. Terms. Rates are starting to go down. Used prices are still up compared to 2018, but they are stabilizing and going down. So I think all of those factors are gonna ease up in the next year and a half, assuming we're not going to have a crash in the economy. It's all about macroeconomics, but new sales are going up this year. Maybe it's going to be not as much as everyone expected, but it's still going to be about probably 5% above next year and continue to grow. Leasing is rebounding, which is good for OEMs to push their sales. Even commercial sales, they've been strong this year. So commercial market on the fleet side, on the rental side, there's demand. So OEMs are selling to rentals, and for most part, not at the steep discount that they've seen in 2018. Talking to all of those rental companies, they're complaining because they cannot get all those discounts that they used to, which is good for retention, but may not be good for bottom lines for Hertz and the enterprises of the world. But it looks like even during the pandemic, if you look at pandemic, the retail industry, all the dealers, they're so adaptable. So again, no matter who wins today or tomorrow, the industry will adapt. Maybe some will not like the adoption, but I think Jay, you were talking about direct sales by the Volkswagen is trying to do direct sales for some of their EVs.
Scout Motors, yeah.
It's coming. Consumers want the flexibility of buying the vehicles the way they want. Some prefer to go to the dealership and buy the vehicle. Some, a lot of Tesla, not a lot, but number of Tesla owners buying Tesla because they just don't want to see a deal. They just want to buy a vehicle without talking to anyone. So I think that flexibility of how the vehicles are bought is just going to accelerate. And that means more trucks on the road to move those vehicles from dealers to consumers. Somebody has to deliver.
I know there's laws in place, but it seems like I can't believe that's still, like when I read that headline, I thought, Really? Like we're still doing that? I guess that's still a thing.
What is it in New York? It's illegal to do it, but Tesla put their dealership on
Well, that's the thing, exactly.
on the reservations, and
And now it's like, okay, it's fine. Tesla got in, but now we're slamming the gate. You know, there's no way. I don't know. But I know I don't have all the facts. I can't. Or do I?
I think the number one driver.
I know Brian knows something. Paul.
The consumers will drive the change.
Yeah, that's where it's going to come. Yeah.
Right. You put the Carvana stats up there, right? You showed what Carvana's doing because they are catering to the consumer mindset. I want to buy my way. And they'll pay for it.
And some people want to,
they're paying a lot.
They're going to do research online and then going to go to store, just pick up the vehicle, or vice versa. It's that flexible. Whoever's going to be flexible is going to win.
Right. So to Alex, you said it. You said that, transportation is going to really benefit from this because they have to drive those vehicles to drop off to those customers. Go to the very first episode you and I did, Jay, with Ty. The very first one. You both looked at me like, what? What are you talking about? We got so many drivers out here with stingers hauling 12 to 14 vehicles, and you're saying we need to drop down to 2 and 3 carriers? I'm like, yeah. Because your distance is going to narrow. You're going to be going to, from this dealer to that customer directly.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Got a guy, I think Noble is in, Noble contacted me through LinkedIn, and Noble is I think he's in Nigeria, and he says he works in marketing, and I asked if it's automotive, and he said no. And I said, a car dealer would say, walk into a dealership tomorrow and say, hire me to sell cars. Teach me how to sell cars. Show me a customer, tell me what to say, let me see if I can sell a car. Right?
Yeah.
That's what a dealer would say, right? Go,
yeah.
All right, here's what you do. Anyways, here's what I wanted to ask. But the consumer thing, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
But you know what? Hey, I get to have fun. I'm gonna run the channel that watches the NADA fight, courthouse to courthouse, because nobody else can really do it. It's kind of a conflict of interest with advertisers and companies, but I'm going to follow it because I think it's fascinating, and I don't get it. And it's going to change. It has to change. There's no way that's going to be that way in 40 years. Not with then it'll be robots in courthouses. And drones and spiders and dogs. So what, the perfect transition, what's going on with Elon and Trump?
Why?
Well, I think that, part of the story that maybe people have forgotten about was shortly after Biden was elected, they had an EV summit at the White House. They invited Mary Barra, Jim Farley, all the legacy OEM automakers there, and Musk was not invited. And he was public about that. He was disappointed, I think, took insult to the fact that they did not invite him to an EV summit to talk about how we're going to sell more electric cars in America. And he was far and away the number one seller. So to what extent that has played some small role in his, political stance, I don't know. But I think that Elon is probably not a guy that appreciates being slighted.
It's also about money. Tesla, all the companies have lots of government contracts, so he had to pick a side.
And he has more than one company that has government contracts. Yeah. More than one company. Elon is a very polarizing figure, but he's not a fool. And to the point before about it's all about the money. I think there's a lot of truth in that. But also, I've listened to several interviews with him where he would, speak on his opinions on various things, and some of them, related to this industry, and some of them related to completely, irrelevant things. I think that he has a very engineer's perspective on things to the point where he's probably on some kind of spectrum somewhere, and
I agree.
He would probably tell you that.
Yeah.
And The way that he looks at things are very if then, and if then.
So it's
and
part
if
of a
then.
strategy, right?
Really, really simple for him. Nuance is something that he struggles with, and by the way, obviously, nuance is something that he struggles with.
So, right, and I think that I'm gonna say this with some. I think talking about Elon in this manner as a business strategist is a way of actually talking about this election without getting too close to the fire. Elon seems to represent something very strong in our industry, right? Between Tesla, his connection to Trump, his fervor, his bombastic need to continually try to innovate and bring something new, which he has proven to do.
Let's don't forget this guy was the first one to say that the Green New Deal was not a good idea while he owned the first major and probably most technologically advanced.
Okay, so in many ways, he
for sunroofs.
And batteries.
So he does represent our industry. He says stuff that doesn't actually represent his beliefs, but he does it out of business. That sounds like automotive to me.
Oh, I wouldn't call that out of business. I would call it, well, maybe out of business. But
No. Well, he's making decisions based on business. Where is he?
Elon.
At this point, it's hard to tell.
He's a mad scientist to me. He's
And
a mad
now-
scientist and a mad genius.
Now
Go ahead.
and now Joe Rogan's in the mix.
Well, he was hoping Trump would show up with a flamethrower so he could pull another Elon.
Yeah.
I want to before I say this, Brian needs to jump soon. Brian, any final thoughts?
Well, first, Jay, thanks for inviting me on, and good to meet all you guys. Interesting conversation. I think we can all agree that regardless of what happens, I think the next few years in the auto industry are going to be particularly interesting. We should all tighten our seatbelts and get ready for a fun ride, because I think someone was it you earlier that mentioned that the auto industry always figures out a way how to persevere regardless of the challenge. I think we're going to see how we get through this next set of challenges. So I think it's going to be a very fascinating time to be a part of the industry.
Incredibly resilient. That's what I always say. Dealers are incredibly resilient.
It is an incredible industry. Brian, I want to say before you go is that I really appreciate you being here. I like having you on the show. I think it also represents part of even though I may talk crazy, I really do like bridges, and I feel like we're building a bridge in an interesting way. So thank you, Brian.
Always good to be on, man. I appreciate your passion and shared interest in the auto industry, and always flattered to be on your show.
Okay, cool. Then I'll see you next time.
Take care. See you guys.
Thanks, buddy. All right, see you.
Thank you, Brian.
Paul, you were about to say something.
I'm just curious. Has anyone seen or heard about the new engine that Elon's developing? It's a hybrid electric ICE jet propulsion vehicle.
No, but I did read about the 6-stroke Porsche engine.
Yeah,
that was supposed to be I don't know the percentage, I don't remember, but it was a substantially more efficient engine than anything that exists today. Now, what does that mean, and what are the particulars? Again, not an engineer, so I don't know the details of it, but there was a lot of real interest in what that could mean in terms of efficiency and power, power extraction per unit of fuel, and whether or not this was something that would tip that balance between EVs and other things. So.
Well, and that is the reason why I mentioned that, because it's such a transition from, he was always EV. Now he's looking at an hybrid, not just an ICE hybrid, but something that's also combined with jet propulsion to be able to use not just in passenger vehicles, but think in terms of shipping, planes,
right?
Our industry,
right? Again,
heavy trucks.
This guy is able to think about all these different. I think part of when you look at all the things he does with Flamethrower, SpaceX, Boring Company, his brain works different.
It does.
Wired different.
I mean,
Completely.
and even if some of these things don't seem to make sense now, he's like, just wait.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. It's a solution it's a solution to a problem you haven't realized you had until I point out that you have it. I don't want to turn this into the Elon Musk show.
That's
Jay.
too bad.
I mean, he'd be a great guest for you, but I don't.
Actually, please do wish it. Okay, no. Okay.
I'll call him and we'll see if he'll.
Right, exactly.
But I think from my vantage point, Tesla, always remember, as important as all these things are, Tesla represents what Paul, maybe or Alex, you guys know what percentage of sales is Tesla in the annual SARS figure? Like how many? What's
4% at least.
4?
So they just dropped below 50% of EVs, and EVs are about 8%. So I would say 4.
Right.
Maybe.
So to put in perspective, what's the percent of sales that Ford F-150, the best-selling truck in the country, is? Not Lightnings, F-150s. What's that percent? Like 50? 55? So what are we talking about? What moves the needle? And, it's great to talk about Elon and all that other stuff. And, we all like the geeky, shiny things and all the antics and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, the meat and potatoes of this of our business is not this segment of the industry. It's this segment of the industry. That's the challenge. That's where you run into the distribution challenges, the sales challenges, the finance challenges, all that other stuff that we all pay so much attention to.
At the end of the day, who's buying?
Well, okay, Brian had mentioned, or who about the ships, the car carriers, China buying a bunch more.
That's huge.
Okay, but those shit, I think that's BYD, right?
Yeah.
And other, okay. Well, the other is BYD, right? There's a couple, NEO or anyways. VinFast, yes. It's okay.
Well, no,
so,
wait. VinFast is a Thailand company.
Thailand.
Vietnam company that is
Vietnamese.
It's small.
It's headquartered in Singapore. Yeah.
But it's okay. Oh, it's it. But BYD, those are all EVs, right?
Yeah.
So isn't that I guess maybe at some point somebody said, who cares? We're going to use fuel to create all this craziness, but we're going to deliver EVs. And what I wanted to ask about is, does this get back into the Inflation Reduction Act? Is this what's supplying all the money to fund short-term losses and push the the EPA mandates onto the OEMs to start cranking out EVs, even if you're losing $5 billion?
Well, it's a small part. The bigger part are the investment in those factories to build batteries, to recycle batteries. It's not directly to consumers through those incentives, but those billions of dollars to build factories in Georgia, North Carolina, a couple other states. That's one of the reasons we had one of the fastest growth in manufacturing jobs in the last several years. Is that investment in those factories. That's why it's
like Blue Oval City and all that.
That's why it's interesting to look to these elections are going to be interesting. That's why dynamic is different, where a lot of the investment is going into red states. So blue administration, but investment went to mostly red states.
And if you look at the number of states that are right to work, as opposed to others, there's a line you can draw between those things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the whole politics and EVs are completely confusing right now.
And look at that. I look at all that and see the innovation they're bringing to the industry and to the economy as a whole. They completely threw the box out. They didn't. Elon Musk and others in the EV industry, they just threw the box away. No thinking outside of the box, and that is what we're investing in, is those concepts, those ideas, to see what really takes us into the 21st century, to really pushing the needle, like this hybrid engine that I was reading about that Elon developed. electric, ICE, and jet propulsion because it could fit so many transportation models, not just light duty cars and trucks.
It's also not directly automotive industry, but as cars getting more complicated, we go back to chip shortage that we had a few years ago, and now we're investing in building chips here. It's a very long process to build a factory. I think it takes 2 years at least.
I think 3. Yeah.
So it's going to take a while, but most of the industry was concentrated in Taiwan. So we need to diversification of that industry, and that's directly affecting automotive industry. So building battery factories is one thing, but also building chip factories.
More than chips, more than batteries. I think components writ large.
Yep.
I think that and the supply chain that feeds components to these assembly plants, because nothing's built on site anymore. It all comes from a million places and comes into one automobile that spits out the back of the assembly plant. And so that has become a more and more interesting thing. And by the way, too, the investment in component manufacturing in Canada and in Mexico, and how that relates into our infrastructure and logistics supply chain, also extremely interesting, because those are small cogs that have big impacts.
There's a lot of news, in Mexico automotive volume. I don't really get into it, but I kind of watch it, and there's definitely stuff happening there with ports too. And then I saw something about Morocco and EU, and I mean, there's a lot of global news that I find interesting. I don't have time to report on everything. I mean, I've got to pick the really crazy stories. But Alex, you got me thinking about red states and EV, and then I'm adding Elon. I know it's not the Elon show, but wait a minute. What if he really is onto something? Like, hey, listen, if I can explain EV, or at least somehow get red states that are regularly anti-EV to not see it that way, but understand that it's the jobs and it's the other parts, right? It's not just the Joe Biden-ness of the EV. Is he onto something?
I mean, even Texas has a growth in EV sales. So it's gonna, California obviously, the whole West Coast is gonna get there first, but the whole industry is moving. It's either EV, BEVs, or hybrids.
It makes me think of Karl Rove's genius with George Bush, right? Karl Rove was able, and that is the historical academicness I'm talking about. There have been players behind the players that saw bricks to move, Kissinger with Nixon, etc., right?
Yes.
There's
and
always
that's
someone
how stuff
behind.
happened.
I mean, Clinton was elected by, James Carville.
Oh my God.
Carville,
I haven't
dude.
heard that name in a long time.
It's the economy, stupid.
Roger Ailes, Fox News, man. It's pretty wow. So maybe Elon is kind of like he's a mover and a shaker, and we're just not getting it right.
Plus,
I think
he has money to push it.
Struggles with mass. I think that's the problem. He has great insights in terms of technology, and he has great insights in terms of engineering. But mass production is something that just has escaped Tesla since really day one. And, they've gotten better. They've gotten talent into their equation that has helped with that. But remember, they're a low volume producer. When you hear Tesla, think BMW. That, in the United States anyways, think about, this is a low volume producer with a high dollar, high margin, essentially, medium to high end luxury automobile. That's what the Tesla is. So, don't mistake a Tesla for, I don't want to demean another automobile, but, don't mistake a Tesla for the most common, comparable car in the United States. They don't compete. That's not what they're there for. You're not going to see, a 14-year-old Tesla show up on, with missing. All right, I'm gonna leave the stereotypes out. I'll just stop. I'll stop. Stop.
Okay, I'll keep going. And now they got Joe Rogan. So now they got the media guy, and they're lining up these brick movers. This is fascinating. who will they get next?
So let me just jump
like an energy czar.
Let me switch gears here for just
right.
Let me switch gears here for just a minute here. You know, and you know, the production part of this equation on the new vehicle sales, which is what we're really kind of talking about. You know, the engineering of new vehicles and what is going to sell to today's market is only a piece of the equation. Eventually, those vehicles the leases are gonna expire. The people are gonna get sick of them. They're gonna sell them. You know, this and that. Now, let's pretend for a minute that we all believe that the financing is going to not lead to a mass negative equity problem. Let's pretend for a minute that that's going to happen. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe things change. Maybe they don't. I don't think so. But let's pretend for a minute it does. New vehicle sales today. Does anyone know what the current SARS is? Either of you guys tracking that?
14.7, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. What was 2019?
17.
Close to 17. 17.1.
Like 18. Yeah, a lot. Big difference. So there are less new cars being built today, which means that there's going to be less used cars just simply available, just because there's that many less per year being thrown into the system. Cars do last longer today than they did before. That's some sort of offset. I don't know what that offset is, but it's not nothing. But the desire to get as close to a current model year, even with a used vehicle, is still that's not going to change. People aren't going to sit there and say, well, this 2015 is just as good as a 2022. No one says that. So when there are less new cars being produced just on a raw level, at some point in time, that will impact that second market. And when financing has less people to sell to, because the used market is this much, the new market is this much, the used market is
huge.
I can't move far enough to the side. So what happens then? That ain't 2008. That's 2008 plus.
Yeah.
So actually, there is a balancing act that has to be struck between new car prices, new car sales, and how that rest of those markets have a tendency to work. To a point that was made before, I again don't remember who made it. This is a very resilient market, and we're going to see it work its way through, and I think that's true. But the pullback, that is something to watch, because in my humble opinion, when you start to see the beginnings of that, your market pullback is a year away or less.
Oh, very close. 25 is going to be the bottom for the used returns. After that, we're going to start seeing increase in available used inventory. So next year is the year when we're going to hit the bottom. All of those leases that were not sold in the last 3 years. The lowest one was 2.5 years ago. So,
all right, now let's add another factor in: attrition. The number of vehicles that are being junked or exported to other places.
Nobody talked about scrappage.
It slowed down. I mean, vehicles
slowed down because production slowed down.
And that's where dealers are going to see the increases in profit, the service departments, because you're keeping the vehicles longer, you have to service them more.
Well, we're keeping them longer because no one can afford to follow the bouncing ball.
So Joe, Alex, and Jay, the VIO report that Experian just put out there, the average age of a compact car was 14 years. The average age of a truck on the road was 12 and a half. So that's where you get the 12, just under 13-year average for vehicles in operation. So at what point does the vehicle become too old out of the 280 million that are on the road that it needs to be sold, traded, replaced, or scrapped? So the prediction is that the scrappage rate for the next 3 years is going to quadruple because of the average age of the compact car being 14 years old.
And by the way, how many of those manufacturers that are now being told, shut down your ICE parts component businesses because we're going to EVs. So guess what? When you don't have parts anymore to be able to put into your ICE vehicles because everyone's jumping on that train over there, your scrappage number is going to go. That's a great term. I didn't think I liked attrition, but scrappage is better.
Wow, scrappage.
It's how many vehicles? So I have a 17 store dealer group that I just put together a program, and their specialty is reselling salvage title vehicles. So they're buying vehicles that have been completely repaired, salvage title, could be flood, theft, return, total loss accident. They're paying 25 to 50% of the actual value of the vehicle and turn around and true calling it, saying this vehicle is a salvage car, but it's been repaired to this standard, this standard, this standard, and you're going to pay this much. It might be $3,000 to $5,000 less than a like new unsalvaged vehicle, but they found a way to do it, and they've got over 5 years of selling these types of vehicles in the marketplace, and now they're recalling those vehicles back in for trades to resell these same buyers newer, previously scrapped vehicles. I mean, talk about resilience.
That's like some Cuban Havana sort of miniature.
So,
yeah, exactly.
Paul, I want you to put a button. What is it? A pin. I want you to put a pin in this.
That's funny, Jay. You stole
it. Shoot, all those great consumer slides in the news. Thank you, Paul. Right? Paul sent me that. Thanks, buddy. So here's one. Your salvage title vehicle, friends, if you get everything locked up with a bow on it, I think there's some content in there, man.
I'll be glad to introduce you when you're ready. Because they have nailed it down. They've nailed it down. And the idea is similar to when I was running my CarMax locations called Value Max. It was a Value Max sale. What we did is we told consumers, Jay, you want to buy this vehicle? The driver's window works, rolls up and down, the AC's cold, the sunroof doesn't work but doesn't leak, and the other windows don't work. But we told you. Oh, and by the way, there was some bumper damage in the rear. But that's the reason why you're paying only $6,000 for this vehicle instead of $12,000. Full disclosure. And people would line up to buy these cars, as long as they knew what they were signing up for.
Well, that's a pay the piper thing, though, isn't it? Like at some point, then they're gonna resell them, and suddenly that's not so good, huh?
Yeah. So you got to be the dealer who creates the market, develops the relationship with the community, and has a reputation of, this might be a salvage repaired vehicle, but we're fixing it. We fixed it.
So we're gonna take a station identification, camera one, live on ATI. We are probably in our final segment here, but we're looking at live election results. Now, what I think historically, because as you roll across the country, you think something early on, you think a different thing later, and then it can change by the time you go get your midnight milk. And that's one of the strange things about this country.
The West Coast is 4 hours behind the East Coast. You can't forget that. And their polls close, at whatever time, and then the tabulation periods and so on. That's a huge factor in how this works.
And I point that out because you could get really worked up thinking that, it should be clear. It's far from clear right now. No, it's just a fascinating aspect of our...
We have 50 states and 50 different laws to count ballots.
And I love what you said earlier, Alex. 10,000 people in 6 to 7 states will decide this thing.
finally make
awesome.
the decision.
I'll tell you what's really interesting to me, and I'm not sure I exactly agree with that statement, but it's close enough. Let's just say, what's interesting to me is the states in the last 3 elections that I can think of, they've changed. There is one state in particular.
The swing states have changed.
That used to be, the knuckle biter or whatever, the nail biter, and that's not one anymore.
It's not. Was that Florida?
Yeah.
Yeah, Florida.
Yeah.
And the other one is.
That's what
I
I
want you
thought.
to take a look. This is really interesting to me. Up until the last
For the bonus
election,
question.
Up until the last election, Ohio has decided more presidential elections than any other state. Right up until the last election.
A county in Ohio.
Ohio, that's a fascinating fact. I mean, forget your politics. It's a fascinating study to me.
It is.
And so suddenly, states that once were battleground states, they went a different way, and it's that the part of the story that's fascinating is that they're not battleground states anymore. In other words, the demographics are shifting. But part of the story is also that both of those states shifted one particular way. Why'd that happen? That's really, really interesting to me.
Well, on the other side, you have
Yeah.
Virginia that used to be a red state. Now it's reliably blue. So
DC.
Yeah. So because the DC is growing dramatically, all suburbs.
Yeah.
Well, you're right, Virginia. Right? Okay, wait. Okay, Virginia's leaning red right now, which that would make sense. I agree.
No, Virginia will be blue. They're going to.
But it will go blue, and that's another one that's maddening. You think you got your color, and then it's Othello.
Yeah, no. North Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan are probably the 4 biggest states to watch. And
Wasn't South Carolina a swing state for a while?
No.
Why did people go there then so hard? I guess the red. I don't know.
Because primaries are
because of a primary. You're right. Primary.
It's a second state. What is second?
Well, and actually, why do we do Iowa first and all that stuff?
Yeah, right. I don't know.
Caucuses, again, I'm not trying to get political here. I'm.
We're not. We're now. This is objective. Yeah. Vermont. Yeah. I saw a headline. Vermont held a 6-vote. Like what? 6 votes? Why would you even bother?
Yeah. Well, they should bother because one day it could matter because as we said that these things shift. They change.
All right.
Right.
Well,
right now, Kansas is blue. I'm just gonna make a prediction here. That ain't gonna.
Yeah.
That's not.
I'm with you there. There you go. Now it's like.
I know a little bit about Kansas.
Pipeline. They want that pipeline back.
Now it's like that Vegas bet site where you should be able to place a bet by states.
Missouri, don't think so. Iowa,
yeah, right. Why is that even close to blue?
Yeah, no. That's just the metro counts being metro votes being counted. The rural votes haven't been counted, so how that goes.
Interesting.
Yeah, but even in Kansas, you have a Democratic government, so it's
okay. Again, I know a little bit about this. A Democrat in Kansas has more in common with a Republican in New Jersey.
Hey, look, Texas just turned blue.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
It could be a Senate race. That's going to be close.
That is going to be an interesting one. Actually, again, know a little bit about that, and Missouri too. Very interesting to see what's going to happen there for a couple reasons.
Going back to the swing state picture here. So we've got Michigan, because this is it, right? These are the ones to watch. Yep. Michigan, all right, leaning blue. Arizona, really?
Yeah, Arizona's going to be blue.
They still voting. It's the polls.
Arizona's going to go blue?
I think so.
I thought it went red.
No.
Not during the last 2 elections.
Is that right? Wisconsin.
Yeah. Blue.
I would think so. Pennsylvania, blue.
Toss up.
Toss up.
That's gonna
It is a
Comes
toss-up.
comes down to the county.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, but
Nevada's red, isn't it?
they've spent a lot. Trump spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's what I saw recently, right?
Nevada,
didn't do that for nothing.
Nevada been blue for a while, but it's going to be very close. There's a lot of people are moving in and out, so its demographic is changing quickly.
A lot of people leaving Pennsylvania for various reasons, and there you have it. Yeah.
North Carolina and Georgia. Well, North Carolina. Now isn't that just clear red?
I think that'll be red. I think it'll be red.
The statewide offices are Democratic, but everything else is Republican. But it's going to be close. It's going to be.
You got the blue dots.
So, two things to remember about North Carolina: huge army base, huge military presence there.
Right.
That has a tendency to vote in a particular direction. So, and the army has been downsized over the last 3 to 4 years. So that has an influence on things.
That's going to be bad. Yeah.
And,
one of the largest red counties was wiped out by Hurricane Helene.
Really? Yep. Oh no!
But you have
I think they hit it with that Jewish space laser.
But you have a very unpopular governor candidate that's losing by 20 points
in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And Georgia, isn't that red?
Fascinating what's happening in that state. I find it fascinating.
It's going to be again within 10,000 points, 10,000
counties.
Yeah.
Georgia is going to be the new Ohio, I think.
Georgia's going to be the new Ohio. Maybe. Well, interesting. Well, the swing states really are fascinating. I mean, I don't know. Thank God for swing states. Hey, somebody should call Toby Keith.
Good luck with that.
Thank God for swing states.
See if he answers you.
Maybe Elon will step in. It's 8:30. We looked at the election. We talked about automotive. I'm sorry Will Morris couldn't join us. He really wanted to. Something about a plane, and I think his flight changed, and he was really sorry he couldn't make it. But before we go, and I want to say I think there was some really good discussion. I'm going to have a good time going back in the description and looking at the notes. I'm also proud that this show has some evergreenness. What I don't like is making like Joey Chestnut eats this many hot dogs show that's totally irrelevant for the rest of the universe. This show had some nuggets in it, even though it's about something that, is a one-time deal. And I think that's really, really cool. So Joe.
Can I throw something at you here?
Yeah,
I
please.
Think one of the things that we haven't talked about, we talked a lot about the industry writ large and what does this mean for sales and things like that. But one of the things that I want to talk about is regulation, because a new administration can mean many, many different things from the standpoint of regulations in the United States, and whether they're going to continue with what was the current regime's priorities, or if they're going to go a very different direction. Could be extremely formative on the overall industry, because the people that get him there are the people who have to conform to those laws and regulations. I did a quick Google search, and in 2024, the main FMCSA priorities. Most of these got deferred for what it's worth, but the main priorities were electronic logging devices and mandates to try and tighten up and reduce the exemptions for ELDs. Of course, OIDA might have something to say about that. The strengthening and improving the drug and alcohol clearinghouse. Now, the clearinghouse is a very polarizing thing for some people. The decisions that go into what it does and who is allowed to hold a Class A CDL will have ramifications not just in our space, but just trucking out on the whole, which could impact parts and supply. There were initiatives that were basically deferred with automatic emergency braking. In other words, a mandate to start putting some sort of of automatic emergency braking into new rig sales that would increase the safety component supposedly on commercial vehicles. That's a topic that I could debate. And probably the biggest one is speed limiters and the mandate to force an electronic speed limiter on all commercial vehicles. Now, whether there would be a grandfather clause or not, don't know that the FMCSA really got far enough into that in 2024 to discuss it. Many of these were very, very sternly resisted by the industry, but as we've learned in years past, the FMCSA does not care what the resistance level is. If they have a particular policy that they're going to push, then they push it. We saw that with ELD, and whether or not the efficacy of ELDs has actually made America's highways safer is a whole other discussion we can get into at another time. But I did a follow-up Google search, and 2025's current docket of FMCSA initiatives are a better registration system, which means streamlining the registration and management cycle on people that are entering into CDL, Class A or any other classes, which will include the clearinghouse. I would humbly submit that anybody who's had any dealings with the clearinghouse could probably have a better opinion of how that will work than me. Changes to the ELD exemptions, which would essentially force people with older obsolete ECMs into some form of electronic logging device, whether it's with a remote GPS or some other thing. That's a whole other discussion. Speed limiters came up again.
Yes. Sorry.
Transportation
His camera
equity.
came back on. Keep going.
Transportation equity came up again, which has to do with protections for leases and lease brokerages. And if you read between the lines, a little bit of California's proposition on 1099s is slipping in there. And what would that do? Again, specifically to my industry, I would look at this and say, oh, okay, well, this could have some consequences. But what would 1099s and the regulation, a similar regulation to California, have to 1099 employees across the broader industry? What does that mean? So although we can talk about auto sales and those are really important, there's a piece of this that is directly tied to legislation that I think really needs to have a further and broader discussion.
Well, Joe, I appreciate that, because one of the things I was thinking is, when it comes to a voter, in many situations, if you can appeal to what's most important to them, and you just hit upon a bunch of issues that are important in various aspects of our industry, you can secure the vote right there. And what you also did is you did that historical academia that I was talking about. What year were you reading from?
2024.
2024. Didn't some of what you said, and Paul, we lost your camera again, but that's okay. Didn't some of what you said, wasn't it recent past and not current today? Like we were talking about ELDs and stuff.
Well, keep in mind, 2024, they were looking at whether or not they were going to make changes to the speed and speed governors and things like that. 2025, a priority may very well be, under new legislation, if they decide to restrict legislation, to try and make vehicles that have been grandfathered in that cannot run ELD right now because they don't have the proper ECM components. These are trucks that you can plug an ELD into them, but it doesn't have the components that the standard ELD would require to be able to report, per the federal guidelines. And I think the federal government's idea was, we'll just let nature take its course, and then as people buy new trucks, then that number of rigs will wither away until it's eventually zero. That's not what happened. Many people held on to older pieces of equipment, refurbished them, fixed them, and so on, in order for them to to say, I don't want to conform. There's a cost to having an ELD. I got to put extra wiring. It's another thing that can break on me, and so on and so forth. I don't want to get into the pros and cons, but the point of it is that
sounds like a show, man. You know what? Maybe because I'm full the end of the year, it's going to come around quick, and we're going to end soon. and I know that we gotta jump off. But Joe, I have a feeling that we should put together some kind of, I don't know what the show is. Well, we don't know who's gonna win.
Either way, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who wins. It doesn't matter who wins. The game plan moving forward is that the economy, first of all, as you said, it's the economy, stupid, right? Everyone's focused on the economy.
Did James Carville say that, by the way?
Something like that, yeah.
That's amazing.
Pretty close.
Okay.
I remember I think it was the last show I did with you, Jay, where I was showing the cost of daily living expenses, right? And it just blew everyone's mind of how expensive it was in all these different categories. So it doesn't matter who wins. What matters is how resilient and, as I shared with you, Jay, earlier, the people, the process, and the technologies that we put in place to answer those challenges. When we do that, it's a gold mine. There's a gold mine of opportunity for the next 3 years.
And so here's my hope. All right, here we go. Final thoughts. My hope is that whoever wins, that whatever was the most positive message that we heard in this final surge, that they remember that positive message if they win. That's my hope. My fear is that they won't. Who's next?
I hope
Follow
it's
that.
I hope it's going to be decisive either way. It has to be.
Good one.
It has to be known.
It's got to be decisive either way. If it comes down to one county, oh brother. Yeah, no, you're right. I hope it's decisive either way too. Joe, Paul.
It does need to be decisive. I'm sorry, I was just capturing a note to make sure I do something for you tomorrow.
Yeah.
It does need to be decisive, but it wouldn't matter.
It won't matter.
It won't matter.
Well, I'm a believer in the United States of America, and I think that no matter what happens, if this next election is close and not decisive, and it probably, I'm sorry, I'm a cynic, but I think it will be close. I think that the lessons of the next election should be, how do we blow this? That other person over there should have been a blowout. And I think that ultimately will drive a better candidate for the United States. That's one thing. Number two, we kind of touched on this in bring it all back around again. Focus on the fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on the business. Focus on, don't get hung up on, chasing canaries. We got better things to do, more important things to focus on in our business. Focus on that. Because whoever's up there in D.C. is not the person that's going to ultimately feed your family.
And isn't that what Elon has done, is he's focusing on business?
No.
No?
Yes.
I don't know. I think he is. The more we've talked about it, I'm starting to understand the guy. He just sees where the puck is going. He's Wayne Gretzky.
Wayne Gretzky, that's right.
Of technology and business.
There is no puck. I built a better puck.
There is no
stick.
spoon.
No one's allowed to use the stick, but I've got a better stick.
There is no puck.
This stick costs 4 times what it should, but I've got a better stick.
Paul. Thank you, Brian. Sorry you didn't make it, Will. We'll catch you on the next one. Gentlemen, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Show after show exceed my expectations, and I just couldn't be happier. So I thought there was a lot of really great stuff. It was fun to see you too. So thank you for being a part of it. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, gentlemen.
See you guys.
Here we go. And that's a cut. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Let's see here. What do we got? So this is now. Wow. Wow. Either way, wow. But you know. I'd like to thank Superflow Systems, Auto Hauler Exchange, ClearPath TMS, Murphy Auto Transport Services. I want to thank all my guests tonight. Alex Yurchenko, Joe Bercari, Paul Machin, Brian Finkelmeyer, and Will Morris. We will catch you on the next one. I want to thank everybody in the live chat. Thank you so much. And thank you, America, for making it Super Tuesday. So, whatever you're doing right now, just keep on doing it. Don't go chasing canaries. That's what Joe said. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good night. Take care. I'll see you Thursday. Here comes the car hauler. Thanks.